Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Really excited to talk about some more draft night trades. We've got even more draft night trades to discuss and talk about. I put a lot of time and effort into this video to break down some potential trades we could see on draft night in the 2024 draft. And there's a lot of different deals in here. Some of them are big deals, some of them are small deals. So let's go ahead and jump into it now with some of those potential deals and what we could see in our video preview. We have 8 NBA draft night trades I expect could happen in this video. Now remember, these are frameworks, not finalized deals. So maybe there's a couple more second round picks that have to be involved. Maybe there's a young player that needs to be included. Maybe there's a team that doesn't want to give up as many draft assets. This is the beginning stages of discussions and conversations. Obviously, each GM, each executive is going to value things a little bit differently than I do. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. Perhaps I'm wrong in some situations. Sometimes they're wrong. Obviously, trades are not always balanced if you look at the course of NBA history. So these are loose frameworks to talk about some potential ideas and deals that I think make sense for both sides. And I'll break down my my thoughts on each and every trade that I have. They will be in ascending importance, so we're going to start with the small trades first. Those are for the basketball sickos. If you guys really love basketball, if you love all the minute details, all the little things, I started out with those smaller deals for you specifically so that you don't have to wait around and you get to see some of those nuanced trades. And we talk about the CBA quite a bit. We talk about the direction of some franchises and organizations. The small trades, I do think, paint a good picture towards what some teams are trying to do moving forward. Then we'll conclude the video with some really big trades, some really impactful trades that I do think could play a real role in deciding who wins the NBA championship in 2025. Comment your favorite NBA draft night trade packages down below, by the way. Whether you found them in this video or you have your own trade ideas cooked up, I want to hear what you guys have in mind. Alright, so I have to break up this video just for a second here because I actually recorded this a day in advance and then, well, the NBA happened. And what happened was the Chicago Bulls made a trade with the Oklahoma City Thunder involving, of course, Alex Caruso and Josh Giddey. And funny enough, I had a couple of trades in this video talking about those two players specifically getting moved. Now, I don't think that surprises most people. I talked about Caruso as one of the best available targets this offseason for contending teams. And I also talked about Josh Giddey as a really high upside reclamation project. He was playing out of position in Oklahoma City, and I think could really find his value once again in a new role, in a new situation. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that in this video as well before we actually get into some of those other trades. So if you guys are curious of that, make sure to stay tuned through this part of the video. Obviously there's chapters so that you can talk or jump ahead, excuse me, to some of those mock trades. But I want to talk about this deal a little bit. I'm not going to make a full video on the channel, but I'm going to spend the next 2-3 minutes talking about it. The Bulls traded two-time all-defense guard Alex Caruso to the Oklahoma City Thunder for guard Josh Giddey. I think this is a really strong trade for both sides. I do specifically love it more, though, for the Oklahoma City Thunder for a few different reasons. If we go over to what I tweeted about it initially, I was actually out when the deal happened, so I couldn't record a video on it live. This is what I instantly graded it. Now, this was immediately, as soon as I saw the deal, I gave these grades. I've kind of changed my stance just a little bit, but I do, for the most part, still agree with where I'm exactly at on this. For OKC, I give them an A+++. I think for the value here, not trading any draft compensation, getting one of the best fits out in the market, a player who is going to be a seamless addition into their lineup. They're trading one of their worst defensive players, one of their worst perimeter defenders, and upgrading him to an all-defense team member, someone who is great on and off the basketball defensively. He's tremendous in tag situations as a weak side defender. He's obviously a fantastic on-ball defender with a lot of positional versatility. I think Caruso and Lou Dort are going to have a lot of opposing teams and opposing perimeter players in jail on a night-in, night-out basis. It's a really strong combination there defensively. I think Caruso, even though he's not as good as Drew Holiday, will function very similar for OKC, how Drew Holiday functioned for the now NBA champion Boston Celtics. I think Sam Presti was looking at that series between the Mavs and the Celtics and saying a player like that would do wonders for our team. I think that's exactly what Alex Caruso is going to do here. I think Sam Presti knocked it out of the park, trading, yes, a young player, a player that they spent a high draft pick on. In this deal, it does hurt to give up on a player like that, but they got someone who is a perfect fit, just only 30 years old on a very cheap contract for another year. They're going to have bird rights on him to keep him long-term, probably on a favorable deal, anywhere between $15 to $20 million a year going forward. With the likely cap spike we're going to see over the next couple of years, it's an absolute home run for Oklahoma City. I love it for the Thunder. And then for Chicago, I gave them a B grade initially. Now, I maybe softened up on that a little bit, maybe a B+. I think Josh Giddey makes a ton of sense for Chicago for a few different reasons. And one of them is when he played without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this past year and played back into his natural position, which is point guard, he actually found a really good deal of success. In those 7 games that he played without SGA, he averaged over 19 points, averaged over 7 rebounds, nearly 7 assists, shot 53.5% from the field. Now, he didn't shoot very well from 3, but it's relatively low volume. That's one of the big benefits you get from having Josh Giddey play with the ball in his hands more. He's not going to be as reliant on shooting threes because it's not going to be about where his defender is guarding him off the ball. It's about how teams defend him with the ball in his hands, how to leverage his playmaking talent, how to leverage his playmaking skill. I think Josh Giddey going to Chicago will assume the Lonzo Ball role. They're going to have him pushing the tempo in transition, running a ton of pick-and-roll ball screens. I think Kobe White's shooting alongside Josh Giddey's natural size and playmaking feels a tremendous fit together. I think ultimately here, the Thunder giving up on Josh Giddey makes a ton of sense for OKC, but I think the Bulls, a team that was really lacking a long-term direction, this makes a great deal of sense for them as well. Now, I would have loved for them to also get some draft pick compensation. I think they could have maybe done a little bit better than just getting Josh Giddey, because one of the problems I see with this for Chicago, even though Josh Giddey can put up numbers, one of the biggest things in my draft philosophy and my overall team building philosophy, it doesn't matter what players you have that put up numbers, and I know that's going to sound a little crazy. It's about how many games your team is going to be capable of winning. So even though Josh Giddey can put up numbers and can be a productive player and an efficient player when he has the ball in his hands, the question here for me to Chicago is, if you're going to play that way, if you're going to play with Josh Giddey having the ball frequently and being a ball-dominant point guard, does that generate a lot of winning for you over the next 7 years? And maybe Josh Giddey reaches new heights, finds new comfort levels, and really grows as a player between now and then. But in the event that he doesn't blossom into an all-star level player or something near that in terms of his impact on winning, well, then this trade kind of feels like prolonging their rebuild a little bit, because even though Giddey will be good, this would also probably prevent them from really bottoming out to get a top pick. They didn't get draft picks in this deal. So I do think Chicago in a vacuum could have done a little bit better getting draft picks and kind of resetting their team and maybe turning their direction toward tanking, or just getting a different young player, or even getting Giddey with an asset included. OKC had so many assets, I'm surprised they didn't walk out with at least second-round picks or something in addition to this as well. But overall, I think the deal is pretty fair both sides. Now let's actually jump into some of those mock trades in the video. Trade number 1, and this is a small trade. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but if you look at the recent moves of the Boston Celtics, last year they traded out of the first round completely, and then they traded out of some of their second-round picks to pick up extra future second-round picks. They are going to be following that trend in this video, where they trade out of pick number 30, the final pick on the first night of the NBA draft. Yes, that's right, 2 nights of the NBA draft, which means pick 30. Maybe we could see it treated like the NFL draft a little bit, where teams trade up to pick number 32 to get that final pick in the first round before the teams take a break from drafting. Obviously, the NFL has a little bit more nuance than that with the 5th-year option. Obviously, that plays a big factor into it as well. But in the NBA, maybe a team could go out and try and get pick number 30. And I thought Indiana was a great team to try and do this. They do not own a first-round pick, but they do have 3 second-rounders in this year's draft at pick number 36, pick number 50, and I believe pick number 51. It might be pick number 53. Excuse me on that if I'm a little mistaken. But the reason Indiana does this here, they already have a collection of young two-way guys that I like in Kendall Brown, Oscar Tshiebwe. Last year they drafted 2 first-round players in Jarris Walker, Ben Shepherd. Both of them didn't have a very big role this past year. The reality for Indiana is they can't harbor 3 rookies, especially second-round rookies. So trading up from 36 and 50 to go up and get one specific prospect, I think does make a good deal of sense for them. Getting one player that they have long-term belief in, especially in this draft where the quality of the difference in quality between pick number 20 and pick number 30 isn't drastic. Yes, you're only moving up 6 spots, but at the cost of pick number 50 as well, I think that is well worth it for Indiana. A team that doesn't need to take a whole bunch of shots in the dark. Instead, they can take a calculated risk here, go and get someone that they really want to land. depending on who that prospect is. I don't know yet at this point who is even going to be available at that spot, but I do think Indiana is one of those teams that with the 3 second-round picks they have the flexibility to move up in the draft if they want. Getting the final pick in round 1 could make some really good sense for them. And then for Boston, a team that, look, they've already pushed way past the second apron. They have a lot of money committed. They're about to sign Jason Tatum to the richest contract in NBA history, something they did last year with Jaylen Brown as well. And then Derek White also is extension eligible. So the Celtics are really ramping up their tax bill. They're going to be paying a ton of money to 5 players. Obviously, Al Horford's aging as well. I think with Boston, it's really important that they have multiple stabs, multiple shots at hitting in the second round, which is why they trade out of pick number 30, maybe get a similar quality player at number 36. You also pick up number 50 there as well, where you can maybe take a stab at another player, whether it's a 4-year guy who you feel like has a pretty high floor, or maybe it's a freshman coming out or an overseas prospect coming in that has a little bit of a ceiling to play into. And if you're Boston, taking those stabs makes a good deal of sense. Last year, again, this is predicated on the fact that in the past we've seen them trade out of the first round. We've seen them try and rack up and compile second round picks, especially with the new second round pick exception. It's really important for Boston to find cheap labor and taking stabs on players who could maybe hit into their rotation at the back end of it. This makes a lot of sense for Boston. You could really substitute Indiana for any team that has multiple second-round picks in this year's draft. I thought the Pacers made a good deal of sense, though, because of how strong their rotation already is, their depth already is. They don't need 3 second-round picks, so trading 2 of them here in this deal allows them to go up, get someone they actually want in this draft at pick number 30. I think it makes a good deal of sense for both sides, but again, Indiana's maybe the team you can substitute out with a number of other teams maybe willing to make this same kind of trade. Trade number 2 is one between the San Antonio Spurs and Utah Jazz, and the first time you look at this, you're going to say, whoa, why is San Antonio doing this? They're trading Devontae Graham's expiring $12.6 million contract along with 3 second-round picks to just get 1 second-round pick back. Why would San Antonio do that, especially since San Antonio already has cap space? They have about $22 million in cap space before making this deal. Well, guess what? After making this trade, you have $33 million in cap space. The Spurs, for a majority of their history, have not been the most active team in free agency. Their biggest signing in franchise history, I think many would argue, is LaMarcus Aldridge. A few years ago, they made a run at Marcus Morris. He ultimately changed his mind on them and decided to flip his commitment to the New York Knicks at that point in time. The Spurs have been stung in the past in free agency, but making a move like this where the Spurs already have so many future draft picks, so many future assets, trading 2 extra second-round picks in a deal like this to get off of Devontae Graham's money not only opens up cap space for them to be aggressive in free agency, maybe target a couple of guys that they would like to add, like a Kyle Anderson, a reunion there could make some sense. DeAnthony Melton from the Sixers could be an interesting target for San Antonio if they're trying to look for defensive-minded backcourt options. They could really use cap space well, even if that means splitting it across 3 players and just strengthening the quality and depth of their rotation. Or they could go out and target one specific player, opening up money to maybe go out and get Malik Monk. If you need a little bit of extra money to go convince a guy like Malik Monk to leave Sacramento to come to San Antonio, that extra $12 million, not that all of it would go to Malik Monk, but some of it might, and that's where the benefit here of trading Devontae Graham makes sense. And there's an added benefit here. You get a $12.6 million trade exception that you could use over the next 18 months or so. So there's some real value in making this type of trade, not only from the ability to open up more cap space and maybe go out and target one or multiple free agents, but you also have a little bit more trade flexibility going into this next year's trade deadline, going into next year's draft in 2025 as well. You can either harbor in a bad contract the team wants to dump, or you could go target a player who's around the mid-level exception price point and add them into your rotation as well, using other draft assets in the future, while the Spurs over the next 12 months or so start to really prioritize winning with Victor Wembanyama. And then the Utah Jazz, this is not a huge deal for them, but they already have a ton of draft picks. You might say, okay, what's the value of adding a few more? I don't think Utah's going to be aggressive with their cap space, and with the new cap floor, you have to spend, I believe, 90% of the salary cap. Taking in an expiring contract like Devontae Graham and getting incentivized to do so, I think does make some sense for Utah. I don't think Devontae Graham would really play for them at all, but I do think that for Utah, a team that's probably not focused on spending in free agency a ton, maybe they could shock me. Maybe I'm way off base with that. I just don't expect them to go out and be super aggressive hunting in this year's free agency, maybe next year's, and this type of trade does not jeopardize that at all, and it gives Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz just a little bit more flexibility in future trade talks as well, picking up a few extra second-round picks. They get one of their own back in 2026. There's some value in this for them to take in an expiring contract. It's pretty low risk and mild reward here for the Utah Jazz, in my opinion. Now on to trade number 3, and we're finally talking about some players that could make some sense getting rerouted and moved in different places. This is one I've talked about in the past on the channel, but I wanted to reiterate the value of this, especially with some of the rumors that the Kings and Sasha Vezenkov are headed toward a breakup. Sounds like Vezenkov wants to return back overseas. So as a result, Sacramento can use his $6.6 million contract as a dumpable salary. And with that, there's a player I think Milwaukee could really value adding into their rotation, and that is Davion Mitchell. The Kings at the end of last season found a real breakout performance from Keon Ellis, who I think has solidified himself a long-term rotation spot there with the Kings. They have a lot of questions right now. Malik Monk potentially leaving in free agency. I've already referenced him in this video. But the Kings, I do think with Keon Ellis, feel very comfortable with what he's going to provide for them. So they could look to bolster their bench scoring by trading Davion Mitchell, who is nearing the end of his rookie contract already at this point. There's a question of how much Sacramento would be willing to pay him, and how much is he going to really expect or want. He just hasn't hit in the way I think a lot of people were hopeful for when they drafted him. They have to attach a 2025 second-round pick here, which also helps Milwaukee make some other trades. But the Bucks get someone here in Davion Mitchell who could be an elite screen navigator. Defensively, there's a reason Davion Mitchell's nickname is Off Night. And for a team that really struggled defensively all season long, getting a defensive-minded guard who is extremely young yet and could fit into the long-term plans for Milwaukee, I think makes a ton of sense for a team that is relatively old. Their future seems kind of scary, kind of questionable at this point. They do have some young pieces I like. Ajax, Marjon Beauchamp. Adding Davion Mitchell into the fold, I think, could make a good deal of sense again for Milwaukee. And then for Sacramento, you're really helping your bench rebounding, you're helping your bench scoring. You get someone who can knock down the perimeter jump shot a bit. He likes his little face-up game around the 15 to 18-foot mark. He works off the baseline well as a face-up 4 in those areas, and then he rebounds the ball really well. Obviously, his foot speed defensively, not really a real rim protector either. So defensively, Bobby Portis doesn't solve a lot of the issues the Kings have currently. But with the likelihood that Malik Monk leaves in free agency, if you're worried about bench scoring, if you're worried about trying to put points up on the board, Bobby Portis is a very different player than Malik Monk, but someone who I think could still make sense for Sacramento, specifically in uplifting and upholding their offense when Domantas Sabonis is off the floor for those 15 to 20 minutes a night. Those are really important minutes, and minutes that Sacramento, without Bobby Portis and without Malik Monk, would likely lose by quite a bit just because they don't have enough scoring punch. Turning Vezenkov, who does not factor into Sacramento's long-term plans, and Davion Mitchell, who might not either, into Bobby Portis could be a really good stopgap bench scoring piece for them over the next couple of seasons. Trade number 4. This is one that I've talked about in my Dallas Mavericks trades video, and it really centers on Dallas looking for an upgrade on the wing, and it does come at the cost of a first-round pick, but there is a top 5 protection to at least ease Dallas's concerns of making a trade like this. The Hawks, who there's a lot of questions right now. Will they trade the first overall pick? I'm going to talk about that in an upcoming video. I'm extremely excited to cover the Atlanta Hawks in a mini mock draft where I talk all about the first overall pick, what teams could trade up for that pick. So if you're a fan of a team you think might trade up to pick number 1, stay tuned to that video. And if you're a Hawks fan, you definitely got to wait around for that one. So guys, don't forget to subscribe if you aren't already. But in this one, the Hawks, who are probably headed toward a rebuild and kind of a retooling at the very least, they're able to dump Bogdan Bogdanović in exchange for Tim Hardaway Jr.'s expiring contract and a 2025 first-round pick. I think this makes a good deal of sense for Atlanta. Getting a first-round pick for Bogdanović, I think, is a pretty good net return for his services, especially at his current age and his current importance to Atlanta. I think he is definitely expendable for them. We'll see what happens with that backcourt between DeJounte Murray, Trae Young. Do they keep both of them? Do they trade one of them? We don't really have the answer to that quite yet at the time I'm recording this, but it is definitely something that is on the table, I'm sure, for Atlanta and Landry Fields there. And then I think one really important thing here for Atlanta that I do have to talk about, trading Bogdanovich's $17.2 million contract for Tim Hardaway's $16.1 million contract not only makes sense long-term because Hardaway's contract is expiring and significantly shorter. The Hawks do have some cap concerns and cap problems coming up in the future, but it also makes a good deal of sense saving a little bit of money this year. And that $1 million might not seem like a lot, but with the amount of money Atlanta currently has committed across the roster, that will save them a lot of actual money. It'll help their owner save a good deal of money. So it might not seem like a lot, but remember, we're talking about $1 million here. That is a pretty substantial amount of money regardless, and I don't think the drop-off for Atlanta between Bogdanovich to Hardaway with their current roster state is that impactful. And then for Dallas, a team that was just in the NBA Finals, the upgrade from Tim Hardaway to Bogdan Bogdanovic is substantial. I think he's someone who could fit really well off of the Luka Doncic-Kyrie Irving pairing. I think one thing that Dallas really struggled with this postseason was having a third player who's capable of dribbling and actually reliably creating his own shot, and not just getting a shot up, but creating a good shot. That's something Bogdanovic is a little bit better at than Tim Hardaway Jr. I think more reliable as an individual creator, someone who plays within the flow of the offense better. He has a really nice give and go game. He cuts really well. He moves off the baseline better than Tim Hardaway Jr. And just, I think, is just a better offensive player than THJ. So Bogdanovic for Dallas, I think, would be a pretty significant upgrade. The Mavericks have access to trade this 2025 first after their selection is done. So after pick number 24, they're able to trade. So this is maybe when you would see this pick, this 2025 pick, get incorporated into a deal, perhaps with Atlanta like I have in this video. Trade number 5, talking about pick number 24, there it is. This is getting traded in this deal to the Portland Trail Blazers along with Bojan Bogdanovic and his $19 million contract. And the New York Knicks turned Bogdanovic, a player they brought in at the trade deadline who didn't really have a real role with them, didn't play as much as I think a lot of people expected by the end of the regular season, and really fell out of their playoff rotation by the end of it, despite a ton of injuries. Obviously, Bogdanovic was going through some things as well, but the Knicks just clearly are not going to keep Bojan Bogdanovic to play him. They're going to keep him to trade him. And that $19 million contract easily gets routed here to Portland, who also saves some money, very important for them because they have a lot of money committed to their roster too. And the New York Knicks get a significant upgrade to their backup point guard spot. Now, I know they do like Deuce McBride. I like McBride as well, but from an offensive creation standpoint, Malcolm Brogdon, who is 2 years removed now from being the 6th man of the year, could provide some real value to the Knicks off the bench. He's not a pushover defender either, so Tom Thibodeau, who really likes his defensive guys, Brogdon's not the best defender, but he's also not one of the worst in the league either, and he's got decent positional size. He fits like a prototypical point guard. So I think Brogdon, at this point of his career, an expiring contract, I could see New York, who has picks 24 and 25, being willing to mortgage pick 24 for a chance at upgrading the back end of their rotation right now, getting a player who fits in as maybe their 7th or 8th guy. They're a really loaded roster. I love the Knicks team composition. They've got a lot of talented players and a lot of good pieces. Getting Malcolm Brogdon and increasing their salary does hurt them a little bit, but I do think it is a very meaningful upgrade and one that would definitely enhance their chance of pushing further in the NBA playoffs next year, probably getting to a conference finals and maybe even the NBA finals if everything goes right for them. And then for the Trailblazers, they already have pick 7 and 14. They add pick number 24 here. They have a couple of second rounders. My idea behind this trade is maybe they would make this on the night of the draft at pick number 14 or something. If they wanted to move pick 14 up with number 24, maybe they could jump back up into the top 10 again. Maybe a team like Chicago at 11. Maybe they could incorporate this into a three-team deal where 24 and 14 goes to the Bulls for number 11 if the Blazers want to go get someone like Cody Williams, or if they wanted to secure Khalil Ware. There's a few different players that could make a really good deal of sense for Portland, and if they don't want to jeopardize them going off the board before pick number 14, they could maybe look to make this a package deal, a 3-team trade where 24 also gets included into that. You're essentially using Malcolm Brogdon as your trade bait to New York to get other assets to help you make other deals on draft night. Maybe that even means moving up from pick 7. You never know, but I do think this would be a pretty strong framework to a potential 3-team deal if Portland wanted to include another franchise into this type of trade composition. Trade number 7, and this is one of my favorites from the entire video, the Memphis Grizzlies. One of my biggest questions for them after trading Steven Adams who is their starting center, and it should not be Jaren Jackson Jr. unless you find a really great power forward to be starting at that spot. So they solved that center solution here with trading up with the Detroit Pistons to get pick number 5 and ultimately selecting Donovan Clingan. Now there's a lot of rumors right now. Could Atlanta take Donovan Clingan number 1? We'll see. In this scenario, essentially Atlanta would pick Alex Sarr first, the Wizards would maybe pick Zachary Risache second, the Rockets would pick Reed Sheppard third, and the Spurs would maybe take Stephon Castle 4. Part of my thought process here is if Donovan Clingan makes it out of picks 1 and 2, past Atlanta and past Washington, I'm kind of unsure that either Houston or San Antonio would take him, which means Memphis would then only have to trade up to pick number 5, and Detroit is a team that has cap space. They have very obvious and evident needs. They would be willing, in my opinion, to move down to pick number 9 to pick up good quality players and good quality pieces that fit their long-term timeline. That's exactly what they get here. They get a reunion with Luke Kennard. The Pistons badly need shooting. Luke Kennard is an absolute laser from 3. He's also capable of handling the basketball a little bit. I think would be a natural fit next to the Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey pairing as both a floor spacer and a tertiary playmaker, ball handler, decision maker. You also get an upside swing here on Jake LaRavia, who's a first-round pick a couple of drafts ago. Memphis probably on the brink of moving on past Jake LaRavia. They have a couple of young wings that they probably will prioritize over him in Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson. LaRavia becomes a little bit more expendable in this situation, especially as Memphis gets healthy. LaRavia is someone who could be on the move. Detroit gets to bring him in on his rookie contract still. You also get pick number 9, so you're only moving down 4 spots. You're picking up 2 rotation players here in Kennard and LaRavia, and you get 2 second-round picks. This feels like a really good deal for Detroit, and some Grizzlies fans might say that's way too much to give up to only move up 4 spots. The issue with that, and the issue with that kind of thought process, it doesn't matter how many spots you move up. The difference is having Donovan Clingan on your roster or not. If you don't trade up, you're not getting Donovan Clingan. So if you have to give up a decent amount or like this much to go do it, I do think it makes some sense. And one thing here, Detroit has a ton of cap space. After making this trade, they would still have enough room for a max cap slot, which is super important. They could still go out and pay someone to really improve their roster if they wanted to. And the Memphis Grizzlies get an $18.1 million trade exception. So Memphis, who has control of a lot of their own future first-round picks still, they have really the tennis ball is in their court, so to speak, for making other moves. This would give them the flexibility to bring in $18.1 million of salary, whether it be in 1 trade or 2 trades, maybe even 3 trades if they really break it up. That would be pretty questionable though. But in 1 or 2 trades, most likely, they could readdress shooting. They could bring in players who are worth $18.1 million and fill in the void left by Luke Kennard or Jake LaRavia, especially with how their current roster looks. The center spot is the biggest need. Getting Donovan Clingan, I think, is an absolute home run for Memphis. Would be a tremendous fit there for them. I think he would be awesome playing next to John Morant. I think he's the exact center you would want to play next to Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. I really like his fit in Memphis. I think Donovan Clingan, his natural playmaking feel, his rebounding, his drop coverage, is a huge rim protector, defender, and an excellent rebounder. It checks every box Memphis needs to fill long-term at their center spot. And Detroit, who already has Jalen Duren and probably wouldn't be in the market to take a center anyway, they'd probably get a similar quality player at pick 9 that they would have maybe taken at 5. Maybe Matas Buzelis even falls to them at pick number 9. We'll see. But Kennard, LaRavia, pick 9 in 2 seconds, I think, is worth moving down for Detroit in this situation. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Remember to comment down below your favorite trade idea, whether it's from the video or your own. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on some potential draft night trades we could see. Thanks again all so much for your time today watching this video. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.